This is intended for mature audiences only, so please use discretion when listening. Welcome to Call to Dispatch, the show where we hear real stories from the people who answer the call. When most people think of fire in London or any major city, they picture a kitchen blaze or maybe a small house fire. But in the summer of 2022, the sky turned orange over the city of London. The streets of Wennington burned like the countryside. A wildfire had begun in the heart of the capital. My name is Dave, and today we're stepping into the smoke with a member of the UK Fire and Rescue Service. He's someone who has seen both the chaos and the cost of running towards the heat. Today's guest is Sam, and he has served for 6 years. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi. Yeah, thank you very much, Dave. Yeah, all good. Thank you.
Now, just want to thank you for joining me. But as is tradition around here, I just want to take a moment to just raise a toast to you and thank you for your service. I know that the job that you do is dangerous. Not everybody can do it. So to have you here with me today, I'm truly honored. And I just want to raise this glass to you just to say thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Right. Let's get into the nitty gritty then. When you was a child growing up, what did you want to do when you grew up? What did you want to do? Did you always want to be, fighting fires, or was there something else on your mind back then?
It was, I think, like any young kid, they always wanted to be a footballer. But then growing up in a Nigerian household, my dad was always like, you should always think about something else. So then I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I mean, I grew up, born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. I grew up watching shows like, as a youngster, watching Fireman Sam, watching London's Burning. With him, we used to watch a lot of action films as well. So we grew up watching a lot of 80s and 90s action films. So I've always been into the whole just action. So I loved all of that. So part of me was either like firefighter, police officer, armed services. It was that really and truly. I didn't really see myself sitting in an office, though I had the capabilities of doing it. I didn't really see myself actually doing those jobs as such. I think for me as well, the only thing that I wanted to do that was kind of quote unquote a 9-to-5 job was working in somewhere that's science-based. I think I really enjoyed science in secondary school and in college as well. That's the only thing. But apart from that, any corporate jobs, no, I was not interested in that at all.
Okay. So before we start sort of dealing in the major fires that you've kind of been to, so what about the job itself specifically, attracted you to working for the UK Fire and Rescue Service?
Okay, so for myself, when I was about 18, 19, I started playing American football. So the whole route to playing football didn't really work out for me. I was gifted, like, athletically, but in terms of actual having that football brain and skill, I kind of wasn't the greatest. It's an honest thing. People need to actually have with themselves. So I got drawn to American football. I started playing it. I used to do sports science, and my college tutor, he was big into American football, and he saw that I was actually very interested in the sport. So then he found me a team. They were based in South London. Went along to the training sessions, and I got on really, really well with everyone and the head coach. Signed up for the team, and then I found out that one of the coaches, a very, very good coach, their running backs coach, a guy named Victor Mohammed. He was a firefighter within the capital. Got to know him a bit more and just see how he was as a person. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm like, hey, I want to do that. I remember, do you know what? I actually had a conversation with my defensive backs coach, and I still remember it. And he was like, oh, like, what do you want to be? And I just said to him, oh, I would love to be a firefighter. At the time, I was entering into university, so I kind of put that on the back burner, but it was always in the back of my mind that if I had the opportunity or had a chance to do this job, I'll definitely go for it. So that's kind of, I feel like that's, though obviously when I was younger, I wanted to do it. I think at that point, that's when the seed was actually planted to go into the job.
Okay, interesting. You talk about American football. What position did you play?
So I started off with the defensive backs, so the cornerback, the safety position, and the coaches realized that I was a bit too rigid for that position, so then they moved me to the linebacker position. To the linebacker position, and initially it was a big jump, but I was very much lucky to have a lot of experience and a lot of guys within the linebacker unit who took me under their wing and kind of showed me the ropes on how to play the position. And it started from there, really and truly, yeah.
Okay. See, because if we played a game, right, we'd be on opposite sides of the ball, because I played when I was at uni, and it's something that I don't play anymore because I'm too old for that now. My knees and my speed ain't quite the same, but I was a wide receiver. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, although as a linebacker, you're typically defending like the tight ends and whatnot. But you know, as a defensive back, had I still sort of been playing the wide receiver position when you were playing, you know, in that role before your switch, we'd have been up against each other.
Yeah.
So, do you remember your first day on the job? You know, that feeling of putting on the uniform, you know, for the first time. How was that?
So for myself, I actually started on a night shift. So when I actually got to station, I started on a night shift. It was only so we do you could say a 4-day shift pattern, but we do 2-day shifts, 2 night shifts. So I actually started on the last night shift. So it was actually quite good in terms of it was a very, very slow introduction into the job. It wasn't full on because there's only so much you do on a night shift, and then you kind of you effectively you stand down after a certain time, basically. So from 12 o'clock to 6:40 is your stand down period. Obviously, stand down, you sleep, but when the bells drop, you have to get up and respond to the incident. I believe I was fortunate enough. I think we only had like 1 or 2 shouts that night, but it wasn't too bad, you know, in terms of it was very much slow pace. The watch when I got to station, the watch was a big. There wasn't a division in terms of personnel, but it was a division in terms of experience. You had a group of firefighters that had like double figure experience, and then you had another set of firefighters that were not fresh, but like the experience was between 3 to 2 years, but they still knew a lot. So there was a lot. It was good because they knew a lot of the newer things that were happening within the brigade, and they updated me on that. And then obviously the older lot knew a lot of things that were very much the old school, the traditional ways, and just things that still happen to this day that you just need to know about. So it was good to get both sides of the coin. But when I put on that uniform, it felt great. It was just like, obviously the training rules were still on, but at the same time they were off, because though I had firefighters around me and they would still do their best to kind of help me and protect me, I went in that training school environment. So there weren't no trainers saying stop there, reset, or anything like that. It was more or less everything was very much go. It was dynamic. And you just adapt to the changes. Whereas in training school, obviously, it's very much a controlled environment. They create scenarios for you, but it's not necessarily what's always going to happen in the real world.
Before joining, or when you made the decision to actually join, Did anyone in your close circle, be it friends and family, did anyone sort of have any reservations about you joining? Any worries, anything like that?
So my mum always knew I wanted. Everyone, I think, before joining, anyone that actually knew me knew I always wanted to be a firefighter. They were like, Sam, I see you doing that. You've got the height, you've got the strength. It seems like you've got the brain for it as well. I see you doing it and flourishing. I remember telling my dad, and my dad was a bit reserved because he was like, again, he was very much, do you need to have a backup plan? Because God forbid anything was to happen to you within the job, there's always, what are you going to fall back on? What are you going to fall back on? And I said to him, obviously within the job, there are a few avenues within it. So if you do go up the ranks, I believe it is sub officer. If you get to a position of sub officer, though, I believe they have opened it up to leading firefighter. You can go into fire investigation, so you can go down that route, and then within the fire investigation route, whenever you retire, you can move into insurance. You can also go down the fire safety route as well. So if you do fire safety, the fire safety route, then when you retire, you can start doing fire safety audits on buildings. So there are avenues to go off within the job. But he was very much like, again, he was like, if something was to happen to you, do you have something to fall back on? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, even now, like I'm a driver within the job now. So I've got my LGV license. So God forbid anything was to happen to me, that permits me from doing the role as a firefighter, then at least I've got that to fall back on as well. Plus I've got my university degree as well. He was the only one that was reserved, but I believe when he saw me pass out, when he actually came to my pass out and he saw me pass out, he had the biggest smile on his face. He was absolutely proud of me. I remember the trainers coming up to me and they're like, mate, like, look after your dad. Like, we really like your dad and everything like that. And I was like, yeah, don't worry, I'll look after him all the time, you know. But no, he was very, very much proud of me. And when he saw me, especially climbing up the ladder, my daughter was there as well. She was 2 at the time. And she saw me rescuing, we used dummies, but she saw me rescuing a baby. And I remember, for her especially, anytime she spoke to someone after my pass out, she'll be like, my dad's a firefighter. He rescued the baby. And it was something for me to be proud of. You know, I really did enjoy that time. But yeah, I think the only person that had real reserves was my dad. And he's more or less he understands the job now. He understands what goes on within the job as well. And I always try to keep him updated about things that have gone on, incidences, whether it's an RTC or whether it's a fire, whatever is going on. I've tried to keep him updated with things like that.
Would you say then that in the time that you've been in the role, that your idea of what it was before you got in and your idea or your knowledge of what it is now, are those two different things? Or has your perception of the job changed since sort of being there?
So I will, not really, you know, because I was very fortunate enough to network with a lot of firefighters before joining the job. So I think just during the whole turn of social media, managed to find firefighters through social media and chat to them, be like, oh, like I really want to join the job. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Ask them about how their day went. Sometimes if they've been on like a certain job and it's made either Twitter or it's made the news, they would show me about it. I was lucky as well because I think between 2011 and 2018, I was working retail, and where I worked was not too far from the old training center, and it wasn't too far from another fire station. So we used to get firefighters coming in to the store all the time, and I'd just have conversations with them about the job, just ask them about how their day went and everything, and they'll give me an insight into the job. And anytime there was open days, or I remember just before I put in my application and actually got through everything, I attended, it was like an insight day. And we got to experience, we actually got to do, we didn't do the interview, but they kind of broke down the whole assessment day for us. And then they broke down the whole physical day for us as well, in terms of what we do on our work-related physicals. And we got to go around the fire station, and we got to kind of see what the ins and outs of the fire station and what actually gone, and speak to firefighters as well. And they kind of gave us an insight into the job. And I think for me, having that, coming from university and having that kind of critical thinking in terms of just understanding that you're not always going to be going out to a fire, you're not always going to be going out on the shout, and understanding it really curbed my what's the word? I've lost the word now. My expectations of the job doing that. So when I got to station, I kind of had an all right understanding of what went on.
Okay. Now let's talk about your first ever rescue. I believe it was a residential blaze in Hackney, where sadly a man eventually did die from that particular incident. What do you remember about that particular call? Talk us through that call and how you remember it.
It was, I can't remember whether it was my first night shift or my second night shift. It was a night shift anyway. And the call came through. I was about, I'd just come off my development. So when you as a trainee, you go through training school and you've got your diamonds on your helmet, and when you get to station, you still got your diamonds on your helmet. This just denotes that you are on your development. And then when you take your diamonds off, that indicates that you are a competent firefighter. So this fire happened in early 2022. So around August 2021, I'd just come off my book. So I was off my book for like a couple of months. It's come through as a fire. So I was sitting in BA opposite my leading firefighter. As soon as we pulled up, we could see the black smoke coming through the window. So 3 of us on the back of the machine, we've gone up. My adrenaline was on overload. It was high. Like I've gone up. Then my senior hand, who was sitting in the middle, he's knocked on a neighbour's door. So we found out where the flat was, but he's knocked on a neighbour's door. He's like, we need to get in here and we need to get the hose wall up from here. And then from there, we'll go into the flat. So that's what we've done. So I've got we've got this line bag and I've dropped it out. My officer in charge has got the hose reel and he's tested it before setting it up. He's done his knot, he's setting it up. We've pulled it into the flat. We've got in, me and my leading firefighter have now put on our BA sets. I mean, not put on our BA sets, but we've started up, put on our mask, made our way to the flat, and then we've gone into the flat. And he's pointed and he's like, the fire's in this room. So we've searched all around. It was weird, as soon as you go in through the front door, it's like a little hallway. It's a small hallway, but it's got all the rooms are in front of you. But you, to the right, he was like, the fire's in this room. You can see the soot kind of coming through and the smoke. So made entry in, started doing gas calling, and then so gas calling is you kind of cool the environment around you to stop. With smoke, it's basically unburnt gases. And if they ignite, then you're in real trouble, basically. So what we're taught to do is to gas cool around us, basically. So that's what I was doing. Then saw the fire, was hitting the fire, and it was my leading firefighter. He was like, oh, he felt something next to him. And he was like, oh, Sam, there's something here. And I've got a brighter torch than him. So I've shone my torch and I've looked down. And he's like, oh, it's a man. he's pulled him. He's like, you stay here, control the fire, extinguish it if you can. I'm going to get him out. Luckily enough, there was another BA crew coming in behind us. So he's taken the gentleman out of the room and he's handed him off to the incoming BA crew. They've taken him downstairs. He's come back in. We've carried on sorting. It was quite a small room. It wasn't really a big room anyway. So the fire was knocked out very, very quickly. And when the fire's out, you can't just open a window. You need to ask for permission to ventilate. So we've asked for permission. We're like, the fire's all out, permission to ventilate. We got the go ahead. So then we ventilated the room. And then we realized that the room wasn't really that big, but the fire was more or less where the bed was and unfortunately the guy was a bed-bound individual as well. And the fire was around the bed. So when we made our way out, LAS were already there and they were working on the gentleman. And I remember standing there and just kind of was frozen for a bit because it was like, I'd had a couple of fires before then, but this was like the first time actually going into a fire and pulling someone out. This is before that, it was training school where you would go into a fire, you pull out a dummy. So for me, it was like, oh my God, I've actually done, this is it kind of thing where I've gone in, fought the fire, pulled someone out, carried on fighting the fire. And now he's been handed over to the paramedics and they are working on him now. So yeah, and it's weird. Like for me, that was it. Like afterwards, it was just kind of like, oh, that's the end of that. The following day, went home, told my family about it, just told them what went on, spoke to my mum, spoke to my sisters about it, and just kind of told them about it. I think one of them found it on Hackney Gazette, and then they sent me the article, and they were like, oh, unfortunately, the guy did pass away. I was like, oh, that's sad, kind of. It was really, really sad, but at the same time, a part of me was like, it was very unfortunate. Obviously, you finding out that the guy was bedbound, the fire happened around his bed, and it wasn't until years later that the truth come out about, I think it was the bed. There was a malfunction on his bed. He had like an electrical bed where he was able to kind of sit up and everything, and the motor basically was the thing that caught fire. Yeah.
Oh, you know what, man? Listening to you tell that, like, I feel like I'm in the moment there, you know, imagining, you know, what it was that you were seeing, and I sit here and I cannot help but feel so much sorrow. I don't know this guy, and none of us will ever know who he is because we're not going to say his name or anything because we're not going to break any confidentiality here.
Hmm.
But listening to you tell that story and me picturing what it was that he was dealing with, the fact that he was also bedbound, it just paints such a stark picture of how flimsy life can be, you know,
Yeah.
because one day he's going about his business as usual, and the next, the motor in his bed catches fire and everything's changed. um, so when a rescue doesn't go the way that you hoped, how do you process that as a crew?
So for us, I think the first port of call is we sit around our mess table and we just have conversations about it. We do that anyway. So whether it's a fire that involves a rescue or not, we'll sit around the mess table and we will have like a debrief and we'll speak about the things that went right, things that went wrong. But then even with the things that went wrong, it's not necessarily kind of like, you done this, you done that. It's, okay, how can we improve on it, or how can we ensure that next time we face this scenario, we can do better? What are the learning points? Dealing with a fatality, we try our best not to dwell on it too much. Again, we speak on things that we can do better. if there were learning points, because unfortunately sometimes you turn up and there's not really necessarily anything you can do, but we'll check in on each other, make sure that everyone's all right. Yeah, that's about it. If it's a conversation that needs to go beyond the mess table, there is counselling in place and it's always offered up. So the officer in charge, though I think now the brigade are hot on it now in terms of if there is an incident that involves a fatality, then the officer in charge will inform counselling team, and then they will get in contact with the members of the watch who were at the incident, and they'll be like, do you need counselling? Do you feel you need counselling? And it might not be at this very moment in time. So you could turn around and say no, but then you just let them know, okay, however many weeks, months, whenever you need it, we are here to support you. And then you just go down that route as well.
Is counselling something that you're an advocate for?
Yes. So I believe so, because sometimes it's always good, though it's always good to have someone who understands the job and understands the ins and outs of it. Sometimes it's good to just have someone who's not related to that job, but they can handle, how can I say? They can handle the trauma that you present. And it might not necessarily be a case of giving you answers. Sometimes it's just them listening to you and you just say what's on your mind. And then afterwards, they may present questions, but it might not be questions in terms of, it might be a case of, okay, cool, like you've said everything that's gone on. How do you feel it went? Or how do you feel after that kind of thing? And then you start opening up more and more and more, and then you start opening up different doors. It's like you're going down a corridor of trauma, and they're getting you to open up each door, basically. And you opening up each door, it's shedding more light within that corridor. And I believe it's important sometimes to seek that professional. It's always good to have someone that you can speak to within the job, but then it's also good to have someone you could speak to outside of the job as well. I feel that that's very important as well.
Yeah. Are you ever able to talk to sort of family and friends about the things that you go through? Are you able to ever get like in depth with them about it, or does it have to stay surface level?
So with family, I speak to them about it, but I keep it surface level. I don't really want to say too much or just let them know too much about what's going on. Even with friends as well. But I'm fortunate enough to have a good friend who's ex-military and who was in the police force, who I connect with. And we speak and we just chat about our jobs. But I remember, especially around that time as well, when I had my first rescue, there was a lot of incidences that went on, especially earlier on in the year. I remember speaking to him, calling him up and chatting to him about everything that had gone on. And he just listened. You know, he offered words of advice, words of resolution. But it was just important for me to just get it off my chest and just, there's only so much surface level talking you can do with someone. Sometimes you need to get into the nitty gritty and have someone just listen to you. Because sometimes you can have someone within a job and you open up to them about things and they're just like, what? You worried about that? Nah, don't worry about that. Like, they kind of brush it off. And sometimes it's like, no, I don't want you to just brush it off. I need you to just listen to this. You don't realize how important it is sometimes to just have someone to just listen, even if to them it's insignificant. Because it's weird sometimes. I've done that to people and I've had to kind of pull myself back and be like, no, I can't do that. Because though it sounds so insignificant to myself, to them, it might be the biggest thing, and you kind of have to just treat people as they come in, and you can't just dismiss certain things. So you make sure you check in on people. Like now we've got two new firefighters on my watch. One's done over a year, and another one's done about a month. But I remember the guy that's done about a year, when we went to a collapse behind locked door, and we made entry, and unfortunately the person had passed, and the person had a dog. And everyone talks about if someone was to pass and they had cats, and then the cats would start nibbling at them, but people forget that some dogs do the same thing as well. And unfortunately for this person as well, rigor mortis had basically started setting in as well. So when he had seen this individual, it was a bit of a shock to him. And just being able to just have that conversation with him. I mean, make sure he was all right. Joked with him a little bit not about it, but just joked with him about just his reaction to it. But I think that was just kind of like to help take his mind off of it as well, and to help put him at ease. But we did have a conversation about it, and I was just like, mate, look, listen, if you feel you need to have a conversation with me or our officer in charge, or seek outside help, we're there for you. You ignore the fact that I cracked a joke. It was me cracking a joke was kind of like to just, you seem tense, to kind of put you at ease kind of thing. And I think that's another thing that people who work in emergency services understand, it, that sometimes that dark humor is to put someone at ease, to help them relax. You can see that they're tensing up due to the situation, and rightfully so. It's a natural human response. When you see something very traumatic, sometimes you tense up, you don't feel at ease. But then to have, whether it's not you joking about the matter, that's not the case. You might just crack a joke about something that's gone on or whatever to help put someone at ease. But yeah, it's very much, you learn to just get on with it.
Yeah.
I think you build a resilience, and you learn to crack on, because it doesn't stop. It might stop, but it's only a temporary stop. So even when we get back to station after a fire that's involved in a fatality, we're off the run for a little bit to check our kit, clean ourselves up, and then shortly after a while, we're back on the run again. So you learn to deal with it kind of afterwards. And I'm very lucky. I've got a very good officer in charge, and he will check up even on our days off. He'll be like, he'll drop a message like, "How you feeling? You're all right." That's why I believe networking with other firefighters is always a good thing as well, because you can check in on them, or they can check in on you as well, and they might not necessarily have been at that incident, but to just have someone who checks in and just makes sure that you're all right is always good.
So let's talk about the Wennington wildfire now. When
Yeah.
you arrived, what did you see? What struck you first about that particular fire? What made it different?
Well, do you know what? First of all, let me just. Do you mind if I just set the scene first and foremost about what went on that day?
Yeah.
We was actually on the other side of the capital. We was in West London dealing with a shut-in lift. With shut-in lifts, we've got emergency and non-emergencies. Emergencies, we will arrive on blue light. Non-emergencies, it's just normal road speed would arrive at. So we've arrived at this shut-in lift. We've dealt, I believe, do you know what? It took us so long to get there. I believe by the time we got there, the matter had already been dealt with. Because I don't remember getting off the truck to deal with it. But then as soon as we got on the truck, you've got different statuses, and different statuses denotes what you're doing, basically. So status 1 means you're at station. Status 2 means you're on your way to a shout. Status 3 means you're at the shout. And then status 6 means that you are mobile, but you're available. So that means you've dealt with a shout, but now you are mobile. So as soon as my officer in charge has booked status 6, shouts come through straight away. It was grass fire, but we was initially being sent to Upminster initially from West London. So that's a big blue light run. I'm talking, we was on the bell for a while. We was on the bell, and it's crazy as well because the radios were going crazy. We didn't realize how crazy of a day it was until I remember we was driving up the A12 and I'm seeing multiple trucks going the opposite way to us. And we was 1 mile away from the shout we was initially going to in Upminster, and then Control contacted us and they were like, you're being sent on a detour to Wennington. When we got to Wennington, I think there was either 1 or 2 trucks there. I don't think there was a lot of trucks. I think we was at the second truck there. Obviously, we've got a senior officer. They're like, you need to follow this guy. His stables are on fire and he's got horses. So he's taken us, and the Wennington Fire Station is basically where it was behind Wennington Fire Station, but I don't think they were there. I believe they got sent somewhere else. So we've gone one way and we're just seeing this fire move. And those that know the Wennington area, it's not really a big area. You've got the fire station. I think there's a church behind the fire station, not too far. And then there's like a row of houses. And we're just seeing this fire move, but the fire was moving towards the fire station. So then we've moved our truck from where it initially was to a field next to the fire station. I've gotten off the truck in BA. My officer in charge is like, mate, there's horses in the stable. Go and get the horses. My senior hand as well, he was like, mate, there's people going in to go and get the horses. Go and get the horses and make sure that they're all right. So I've gone in, grabbed one of the horses. First time actually handling a horse by myself. So the lady was just like, look, listen, drag the horse out and then just let go. So I've done that. No, thankfully, no horses were injured. No one was injured on that day or during that time. And I remember there was a horse box that was there. And I believe the owner, the guy who'd owned the stables, had turned around to my officer in charge. And he said, I've lost everything, but can you save my horse box? And my officer in charge was like, we'll do our best. In that time, a cylinder has blown up. And it was the first time hearing a gas cylinder explode. It shook me up. I was like, oh my God, like, this is like World War III. It was absolute manic. But we managed to get the hose reels off. More trucks started to arrive. And what you do before you start pumping, really and truly, is you should find a water source. The only where we was in the middle of the field. The closest water source was on the main road. So we had to get another truck to come along, connect up to the hydrant, and then we will connect up to that secondary machine, basically. They started pumping, we started pumping the water, we started getting water on the fire. We managed to get the area in control, but then there was another field behind the area that was on fire. And everyone was basically just, excuse the pun, but they were blowing out their arseholes to kind of get the fire under control. Because also at Wennington Fire Station, they've got diesel tanks just in case there's ever, like a shortage in fuel and everything like that. There's strategic stations in London that have got diesel reserves at the back, and they were one of the stations that had the diesel reserve at the back, and the fire was moving close towards those diesel tanks. Big shout out to the firefighters that did respond, and that they managed to keep the fire at bay and ensure that the firefighters at that station, their cars were safe and that the diesel tanks weren't compromised. But it was a tough day, I must say. There's a picture, I've actually got a picture of myself walking in the field. The fire that's just happened behind us in Wennington, there was another fire across the A13, and then there was another fire happening in the background. I'm assuming it was along the A2 in South London, but it was just to show how manic that day was, because not only did we have those fires, you had the fires in Upminster, you had fires in Dagenham as well, where people lost their homes, as well as the people in Wennington as well. That day was absolutely just chaotic. We had also normal house fires as well going on in London as well. But because everyone was scrambling all over the place, it was just very hard. Like, you had trucks from one area of London going to another to cover that area that was on fire.
Now, hearing you describe just the absolute chaos that day brought, you've got wildfires going on, and wildfires isn't something that people in the city tend to really see or have to deal with. Afterwards, when all the smoke had cleared and everything had settled down, what struck you most about that particular day?
For me, it was the resilience and the adaptability of the firefighters on that day. Like you said, especially being from a station within the inner city area of London, we don't necessarily deal with grass fires. So being able to the officers in charge kind of work out a plan to kind of stop the spread, to get after it. The firefighters a lot of firefighters worked hard that day. So just the resilience of that. Also, members of the public kind of helping out as well. So when they saw it was a hot day as well. I think it was the hottest day of the year. So people coming out with drinks, ice creams, just being able to kind of support us as well on that day. I remember the field behind us, there was a guy who had a transit van, but he had like a tank on the back of his transit van. So he had water on it, and he was going around helping out as well. And normally in situations where members of the public are trying to help out during like rescue operations, we'd normally be like, no, because just in case you might put yourself in danger. But seeing this individual, there was a few of them on the van kind of going around and trying to stop the grass fires from spreading. It was good. Just everyone just getting together and just working hard and just busting their ass to get the job done,
After something like Wennington, or even after something like Hackney, the Hackney flat fire, how does that affect your mental health?
It's actually a very good question. For me, it made me stronger as a person. Just it started from young as well. I think growing up in a Nigerian household, you needed to be physically fit for them ass whoopings. Now that I'm older, stepping into like being in this job, you realize that you do have to be tough. Don't get me wrong, I believe there is a time and a place for you to open up. But when you're in that moment of having to work, people are relying on you. So you need to be tough. You need to be able to just crack on no matter what's happening or what's going on. You need to be able to crack on because people are looking at you and people are relying on you to deliver. And having that mental resilience is important. But at the same time, having that mental resilience, you need to be able to have that, not, it sounds wrong saying mental breakdown, but be able to kind of decompress afterwards. So for my mental health, it's allowed me to be able to be more open, but in the correct setting. So when I'm with my friends who understand the job, or with other friends who work who work for other emergency service agencies, just being able to just decompress around them, it's important because then it helps me kind of get things off my chest. It helps me reset myself because the more you you keep piling on things, eventually it becomes unstable, and that's when you find that people do have breakdowns, and they have breakdowns in the wrong environments, whether it's a breakdown on station, whether it's a breakdown on the incident ground, whether it's a breakdown in front of family as well. You don't want to be having that. So being able to decompress is important. And I say that to any emergency service worker, any armed forces worker, just anyone that works like a high stressful job, you need to be able to decompress.
I totally agree with that. Now, you speak of the mental toughness and the resilience, and the general public see firefighters as fearless, and rightly so. But have you ever been to a job or been in a situation where you genuinely feared for your safety or for the safety of your colleagues?
Um, so I've been to a few. I remember, funny enough, again, it was 2022, going to an explosion just off our station ground. It was on a neighbouring station's ground, pulling up, and we was the first pumping machine there. And we've arrived on this small road, and we're just looking at all this debris, and we just seen this black smoke. And then it wasn't until we've gone around the corner and we've seen like this devastation of this explosion that's just blown out these windows, and it's just blown. It's very chaotic, basically. I remember my officer in charge telling me and my other BA wearer that we need to get upstairs straight away. So I've grabbed our BA board, and she's grabbed the line bag and the thermal imaging camera, and we've run upstairs. I believe there was another officer in charge that had arrived, and he's just gone straight upstairs as well. So then when we've arrived, he's just like, yeah, the front door's blown out, start up and get in there. We didn't have any hose at the time, so we've gone on there and we've gone in. I'm met with, again, the front door's blown out, but we've got all this debris, and what looked like either the kitchen door or the living room door is at the front door, basically blocking it. So then I'm starting to just clear the way. I've searched the area, made sure that there's no other people within the corridor area of the flat. Hearing this guy, we heard a guy in the middle of the living room, and he's calling out to God. And I was like, oh my God, like this is it. We've got no water. The flat's alight. Luckily enough, the water came up very, very quickly, so we managed to put out the fire. And then there was someone outside as well that started putting a jet through the hole that was in the side of this building. But genuinely speaking, because I didn't know, we did not know what caused this explosion, so we didn't know whether it was a gas explosion or what had happened, basically, to lead up to this moment. So now, as a firefighter, you are entering into the unknown, but you're putting yourself at risk. And rightfully so, to save someone, because that is part of, when you take up that role, it is you're putting up your life to save another person's life, innit? So it was just like, before going in, it was just kind of like, God, just watch over me kind of thing. And it like, we are entering into the unknown. We don't know whether or not there could have been a secondary explosion or not. But I feel that at that moment in time, there wasn't no fight or flight. It was, I was going in, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, it was just like, watch yourself just in case something does happen. Just make sure you've got you've got a get out plan for both myself and my BA partner.
And that leads us nicely into the final question of the day. So, if you could leave one piece of advice or a lesson from your time in service that you'd want everybody listening to this right now to carry with them, what would it be?
Preparation. I feel preparation is key, and I feel for anyone who work in emergency services, but even if you're just a member of public, preparation is key. When I say preparation, as an emergency service worker, our preparation is making sure that we're up to date with our training, as well as making sure that our equipment is up to very good standards for us to be able to go out and carry out actions. For members of public, preparation is ensuring, as a firefighter, you've got working smoke alarms, you've got a working carbon monoxide alarm. You know your escape route if, God forbid, anything was to happen within the confines of your household or your place of work. Ensuring, minimizing that risk. So don't be leaving candles unattended. If you're gonna do it, you're not supposed to do it. People who have barbecue, not barbecues, but like try and like burn, like set up bonfires, having a water source next to you to be able to, you're prepared now for it, just in case anything, if it was to gain out of control or something was to happen, you can put it out. Preparation, I believe, is a key factor for me. I think that's one lesson. And it's always something that's, though I haven't always lived by it from secondary school, you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
That's a very powerful lesson, and it's one that everybody should heed, because preparation, no matter what it is that you're doing, no matter what it is that you're preparing for, preparation is key. And as you say, if you fail to prepare, then you prepare to fail. So yeah, that's a very big lesson, and I hope that everybody that has heard that takes that to heart and keeps that in mind 100%. Sam, I'd like to just take this opportunity to just thank you for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'm pretty certain that the people that are listening to this are going to get a lot from this episode. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it a lot. It's nice to actually have this kind of conversation about the job, like just kind of share what I've experienced in my first 6 years of being a firefighter.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
When the flames die down and the cameras move on, what's left are people, the ones who stood in the smoke, the ones who carried the weight home, and the ones who will answer the next call without hesitation. Today's story wasn't just about fire, it was about courage, the quiet kind that doesn't always make the news. To Sam, thank you for taking us inside those moments. Thank you for showing us what it means to stand in the heat and to still hold the line. And to our listeners, remember, every time you see the smoke on the horizon, there's a crew running towards it. Until next time, stay curious, keep listening, and honor those who serve by hearing their stories. This is Call to Dispatch. Thank you for listening.